Disclose he's a good friend. We were law partners in a previous life. Ambassador O'Brien, welcome back. I saw you were in Nashville last night, and I said to my wonderful wife, whom you know, Robert should have taken a razor. Honest to goodness, can't we get you a shaver or something?
It was a long day, so it was I had a little Nixon shadow on, but
It was
yeah, it was
pretty
a great,
funny.
great night for the president though out in Nashville. It was a late night for us. We got home late. It's good to be on the radio with you this morning, Hugh.
I want to ask you about the trip back on Air Force One. If you indeed were on it last night, how was the president's mood?
The president was in a terrific mood. I was on Air Force One, and the president had a lot of friends and family and advisors on. Of course, I travel with him as the national security advisor, so it's not a strictly political role. But he was jubilant. I think people were shocked on Air Force One at the end of the debate when the vice president talked about ending oil use in 5 years in America. I think that was something that people weren't expecting him to say, and I think a lot of folks felt that was the end of the election. But again, I don't comment on these political things. But it was just from a national security standpoint, that was an interesting assertion by the vice president that we'd be going solar and wind in 5 years.
We have audio from the Biden debate prep room when the vice president announced the end of the oil industry. Can we play that, Dwayne? It's a trap. That was the most famous line in Star Wars, and Joe Biden walked right into it, Ambassador O'Brien. The reason I wanted to play it for you, you just got back from Brazil, one of the world's greatest oil exporters. Now, they're our friend, they're our ally. We have to do trade deals with them, but nobody would be happier than Brazil if Joe Biden shut down the American oil business.
Oh, Brazil, Russia, are some of our adversaries in the Middle East, Iran. So it's look, I can't imagine that would actually ever happen. But just from a national security standpoint, it was something that was very surprising to hear. But we had a great trip to Brazil. Thanks for bringing that up. One of the things the president identified very early in his term, and folks don't realize he's got an innate strategic genius when it comes to these things, is that India and Brazil are these two great populous democracies. They're massive countries, both land-wise, geographically, but also by population and by economy. And they also happen to be democracies. And somehow, in the past administrations, they shoved them in with Russia and China into this BRIC alliance, sometimes called BRICS with South Africa. And the president was just determined to have great relations with Prime Minister Modi in Israel and India and President Bolsonaro in Brazil, realizing that we're in a great power competition against Russia and China. And having these two populous, giant democracies on our side made a lot of sense. And so we've got the best relationships the United States has ever had with both India and Brazil. And so he sent me down to do some trade deals and some investment deals. And we had a terrific reception in Brazil. The president's extraordinarily popular there, and the United States is popular there. So it was really a stroke of geostrategic genius on the president's part. To roll out India and Brazil and bring them into the West and into the democratic side of the equation as we battle these authoritarian adversaries.
I do want to stress one thing, though. I've only been in Brazil once, and as I came in and out of Rio, the line of tankers coming in and out of Rio's port facilities is endless. And the idea that America would surrender oil production to the rest of the world, which is not going to stop. The Paris Accords, as the national security advisor, did your jaw hit the desk when the vice president said he would take us back into the Paris Accords?
Well, it's unbelievable because the U.S., because of our technology and our terrific private sector, has already beat the marks set for the United States for the Paris Accords. What the Paris Accords actually do is allow China to continue to grow its pollution, not cut back its pollution, to grow its pollution through 2060, and the United States and the West is supposed to underwrite that. It's part of this whole failed philosophy of China that if we turn the other cheek, if we help the Chinese become rich, that they'll become a more liberal democratic government as opposed to the authoritarian nationalistic communist government that they are now. And the Paris Climate Accord is what I call peak China, as far as this idea that China will get rich and then become like us, and if we just help them get rich by letting them steal our intellectual property, letting them pollute without consequence, letting them drop plastic and garbage all through the oceans of the world, and strip fish all the fisheries of the world. If we just allow them to do all those sorts of things, they'll be nice to us and become more like us. Instead, they've become less like us, and they sneer at us because of our naivete. And so that was another shocking moment of the debate last night, no doubt about it.
Now, it also came up Russia, Russia, Russia. The president looked in absolute stupefaction at Joe Biden's assertion that the laptop is Russia, Russia, Russia. And then it became funny because the president said, Russia, Russia, Russia. You're kidding me. I believe you were in Geneva talking about election interference with Russian representatives, what, 2 weeks ago?
About 3 weeks ago, correct.
And so you were not in the country when the DNI and the FBI director, Ratcliffe and Wray, got together to warn Russia about election interference. But that was an echo of your message, if I'm not correct, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. Look, we've been sending very strong messages to Russia, but not just to Russia. As Bill Barr, our great Attorney General, says, China's threat to political influence in the U.S. is a magnitude of order greater than Russia. We've actually seen now operations by Iran, and which we're countering. And there are a couple of other countries that I can't mention at this point that are attempting to involve adversaries of ours that are attempting to involve themselves in our elections, and we're fighting at every turn against all of them.
More than Iran, Russia, and China? There are other bad actors besides those three?
Not more than them, but there are not more activity, but there are other bad actors, or at least two other countries that are adversaries of the U.S. that are playing with our elections or trying to influence Americans. And look, we're gonna stop them all. The one message I do have for the American people is get out and vote, because we've got paper ballots in 95% of the country, or at least a paper audit trail from 95% of the ballots. It's very difficult for any foreign adversary to actually interfere in the election. The mainstream media conflates influence attempts to drive Americans one way or the other, or to sow discord, with actually interfering with our election day infrastructure, which is very difficult to do. So the best way to defeat these adversaries, whether it's China or Iran or Russia, is to get out and cast your vote. And we're pretty confident that the election infrastructure of the country is hardened. The Trump administration has spent hundreds of millions of dollars that past administrations have not, to help secretaries of state around the country protect their infrastructure. I was just in Iowa, as you know, Hugh, speaking on the president's foreign policy, and I met with our great and those men and women have a terrific cyber unit. Their day jobs are working as a CIO or chief information officer, or the chief technology officer for their big companies. I Iowa on the weekend, they put on the uniform and they do cyber work, and now they're stood up to help the Iowa Secretary of State protect the elections in Iowa, and that's happening with National Guard units all over the country.
You were also
we're
just
confident.
You were just in Maine. I want to talk about, there was another debate last night between Susan Collins and her would-be replacement. I think Susan Collins is going to win up there. I know you're not political, but you were in Bath because that's where the Bath Iron Works are, and you were in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, because we make ships there as well. I believe the fleet plan is finally congealing, and that you are, what, are you optimistic about it now?
I'm very optimistic. I think the Defense Department has seen the president's vision, and we have a Secretary Esper is working on a plan that will get us to 355 ships, plus additional unmanned ships and platforms that could take the fleet all the way up to 500 ships, if you include lightly manned and unmanned. And it was great being in New Hampshire. It was great being up in Maine. They would just walking those ships and seeing what our great men and women in the ship yards do, the pipe fitters and the welders and the HVAC folks and the painters, and getting the thumbs up and shaking hands with them and hearing their stories. And they're just so proud of these fantastic destroyers that they're building, or down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, as they call it, Kittery, Maine, the little rivalry on the border there, the submarines that they maintain and refit. These are just great men and women who are doing God's work, keeping our fleet afloat.
Now, Ambassador O'Brien, at the risk of blowing the break, which I'm going to do, and I'll play this after the break, I'd like you to comment on one thing, which is it's a difficult thing to define. It's energy. Now, Hamilton in Federalist 70 wrote, energy in the executive is the paramount characteristic of a successful nation. Some people throughout history, I'm not comparing Donald Trump to anyone in particular, but some individuals have been possessed of this extraordinary energy level, which always overawes me because I'm actually an 8 hour sleep guy plus a nap. I do not get it. Was that on display again last night after the debate? I mean, does this guy ever slow down?
You know, he's got energy that is unbelievable. The president's 20 years older than me and has has far more energy than I do. I mean, I can't tell you how many mornings he's called me at 6 in the morning for the first call, and the last call has been the situation ringing through to my home at
Up.
midnight or 11:30 in the evening.